Alrighty, so I think we've got everybody who's going to be with us today. So good afternoon. My name is Robin Lancaster. I am an assistant director of admissions here in Annapolis and also a graduate of the Annapolis campus and also the owner, proud owner, must I say, of a webcam from what appears to be 1997. So if I start to blur as I move around the screen, that's why. And I do get energetic, so I will. So I'm going to ask our panelists all to introduce themselves and say a little bit about what they do on campus. So if you all could just give us your names and then what year you are or what year you graduated, if that's the case, and then say a little bit about what you do on campus and talk about what activities you're involved in and what those activities entail. So we'll start with Andrew and go on through.
Great, thank you so much. My name is Andrew Hill. I'm the president of the Delegate Council. The Delegate Council is kind of the center of campus student government. We charter clubs, and then we also appropriate funds to them. Under the Delegate Council, there's a few other organizations that work with student life and the program, and the Delegate Council does some oversight over that as well. And I'm a junior.
Awesome. Michael, you want to jump in next?
I'm Michael Cannell. I'm a freshman. I participate in the community. I work in the admissions office. For fun, I like to, during the warmer months when it's not freezing, I like to go out on the lake sometimes and paddleboard or kayak. That's kind of helps me de-stress during the week. The gym has a side room that's the yoga studio. So I like to take advantage of that, and we have a really good sports program with intramurals and that kind of thing that I mostly just know about the yoga studio. I'll be honest, I'm not a sports person. Aside from that, I enjoy painting. A couple times a semester we'll have classes where you can come in and sign up and you can learn how to make pottery or do oil paints, and I did an oil painting class last semester that I really enjoyed. So, yeah.
Awesome. Chris, do you want to go next?
Sure, I'll go next. My name is Chris Kruger. I'm the athletic director at the Annapolis campus, and I'm an alum from the class of 2007. After I graduated, before I went to grad school, I worked for the college in another role, which was a senior resident. And the senior residents are folks who live on campus and sort of support student life during non-business hours. So sometimes supervising parties, sometimes just dealing with issues that might arise that need to be addressed by someone. So after that, I went to my graduate school degree. I studied creative writing and I got an MFA from Wichita State. And then when I was finishing that, this position opened and I returned to the college in 2016 to direct the athletic program. So there's a lot that could be said about our athletic program. I guess I'll lead off by saying it's a dream job for me because St. John's is a life-changing place. And because of that, it changes the world. And our athletics program helps people stay at the college because it can be a very challenging place to be, and staying active can be helpful. So it's also a dream job because our program is not for the elite athlete, it's for everyone. I think of my job as to provide opportunities for everyone, students, staff, faculty, to be active together. And so I try to get a whole lot of different things going on. I can say a little bit about each one of these, but I'll just sort of drop them out there and maybe people have questions, or maybe some of the other student panelists can comment a little bit more. So the biggest part of our program is the intramural program, which is done quite differently than any other school I know of. We have 5 teams that have been consistent since 1962, and every student, staff, and faculty member of the college is allocated to one of those teams. And the teams are consistent sport to sport. So we play generally 6 or 7 sports per year, and the teams are consistent playing together for each one of those sports. We also have Kunai, which is a program for women, non-binary identifying individuals, and non-cisgender individuals. which is structured somewhat similarly, although there are some differences. We have the boathouse, which Michael spoke about a little bit, which I also oversee. We have recreational opportunities like kayaks, canoes, and we have water access right on campus, which is one other thing that makes our campus very special. Not a lot of colleges have water access right off their, it's basically our backyard.
Of course, we have croquet, the greatest sport ever invented.
there's croquet. That's true. It's a lovely thing. Our boathouse hosts our sailing program and our rowing program as well. Those are intercollegiate competing teams, but you don't have to compete intercollegiately to participate. You're always welcome to join without any interest in that. So we also have intercollegiate fencing. Same thing. You don't have to compete intercollegiately if you just want to learn to fence. And then I also oversee clubs like yoga club and various boxing, martial arts, that sort of stuff, as well as other classes like yoga classes, Pilates, Zumba, and just general gym use.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. So let's go to Adel really quick, and just hear about what you do on campus.
Hi, my name is Adel. I'm a sophomore here at the Annapolis campus, though I'm a little bit far from home. I've participated in many things over the 2 years, which is another great thing about St. John's is, for example, last year I was a member of delegate council as a freshman delegate. This year I put a lot more energy into our intramural teams. I'm a current hustler, which has been a lot of fun getting to know. You switch teams sometimes from freshman to sophomore year. Afterwards you stick with that team, but getting to know my team this year and bonding with them has been a really great experience. The other thing that I do frequently or weekly is St. John's Chorus. Every Wednesday night, there are multiple music programs on campus, but St. John's Chorus is by far the biggest, most popular. Anyone part of the St. John's community is welcome to join, and it's led by Mr. Kalkavich, who is a tutor at the college. He's an incredible man who really invigorates us to sing pretty late on Wednesday nights for an hour and a half, which is kind of a long time to be singing, but we perform about 3 times a year. And it's a really, really great experience and a great way to continue your freshman chorus experience. So yeah, those are sort of the main things I'm involved with. I am also an admissions student worker. It's my work study, but it's actually been a lot more for me than, just a typical work study job. You get to connect with prospective students and with your faculty in a way that I don't think I would have had the opportunity to do otherwise, and also learn a lot of office and managerial skills because I happen to have some great bosses, and I'm not just saying that because one of them's here with me.
Shucks.
So yeah.
Awesome. So I'm gonna throw down to Ryan really quick, and I'm gonna use you, if you don't mind, to answer a quick question that we got in the chat, which was, what are the intramural teams? Chris said there were 5 of them. What are there? Which one? What are they?
Yeah, I was just actually looking at that question. I was actually going to squeeze it in. My name is Rayanne. I'm a senior, so I'm a part of the class of 2020. I am a resident assistant on campus, so I know a lot about living. I can answer a lot of living questions, dorm questions. I'm also a captain. I'm one of the intramural captains, Julia and I. So I'm one of the Spartan captains. So we have 5 teams: Spartans, Hustlers, Druids, Green Waves, and Guardians. They all have different colors. So the Spartans are blue, the Hustlers are red, the Guardians are yellow, the Green Waves
Gold.
are green. It's yellow. The Green Waves are green. And the Druids are maroon. Yeah. So back to the residents, we have about 3 to 4 freshman dorms. I saw someone had a question about single dorms. there are a lot of singles available, but mostly for upperclassmen. Freshman year, you are required to have roommates. So freshman year, you wouldn't really get a single freshman year. And then the remaining years, you do a housing lottery. So you pick a number, and depending on your number, if you get a good number, you likely get a single. I've lived on campus all 4 years because I've been a resident assistant for 3 years. And I genuinely liked it because it helped form a sense of community, something which I kind of lacked as an international student. Coming here and living on campus, you got to create a sense of family nearby that I didn't know if I could get if I moved off campus, because I'm also part of a very large family, so it was very helpful for me in that way. And I mean, I remember trying to move off campus once, and I had a friend who lived off campus, and he was like, don't do it. He's like, I would stay on if I could. You should just stay on campus, do it for me. So it does increase the level of comfort within community to live on campus, I think, all 4 years if you're able to.
Mm-hmm. Awesome, thanks. Redit, do you want to go?
Yeah, so my name is Reddit. Most people at St. John's call me Red. And I started off in the Santa Fe campus and then moved to the Annapolis campus starting from my sophomore year. When I'm not in class or working at admissions, I'm usually writing. And I started the Great Books by Women Study Group last year and licensed the TEDx event, which Andrew curated. I'm usually off campus at coffee shops, usually at Old Fox, which you guys will get accustomed to if you do come to St. John's. I'm usually there writing or reading.
And then Julia.
Hi, I'm Julia. I'm a senior at the Annapolis campus, obviously. Well, I guess not obviously because we're all remote. Some of the things I do at St. John's, I'm also part of intramurals. I'm a Green Wave captain.
Favoritism.
I am also a student aid worker, but I work for the assistant dean's office as the art assistant. And so I help run the fine arts program at St. John's. And so that includes a lot of different things, including our classes. We have open studio, which is we'll have models come in and we'll draw them. Sometimes we have student models, but very often we hire in nude models from the community, which is an amazing opportunity for those who've never tried it to be able to do it in a safe environment, or I guess not a safe environment, but like with people who have done it before who can help out. Of course, it's obviously safe, but not that it wouldn't otherwise be. Some of the other things that the art program does is we host field trips. We have art conversations, which are kind of like art history discussions, but seminars. We also have art classes, and so we have pottery classes, we have oil painting classes, we have drawing classes, sculpture, all sorts of classes that will kind of change as the year goes along. Part of my job is to kind of read the room, as you would say, and see what the interest is for the students. I've been working there for 3 years now. And when I first started, we were doing like still lifes for our open studio, and a lot of people were coming, and it was on Fridays. And so we switched it to Tuesdays and started hiring more models, and that became more popular. So that's kind of what I mean by reading the room, is figuring out what people want. And every year it changes with a new class coming in. And so whatever you are looking for, we can kind of try and make that happen, be that in intramurals, be that in the music program or in art. We have all sorts of clubs and groups joining every year. That being said, you guys are all asking different questions about different specific groups, and we have most of them, but we can also make more as you come along if there's interest.
So I was wondering if I could throw you a quick related question, and could you just talk about the dark room and the sort of photography facilities that are available?
Yeah.
I think we got 2 of those questions.
Yeah, we have a dark room, which is actually really special, especially considering lots of high schools are kind of closing off their dark rooms now. But we have a beautiful dark room And we have all of the supplies you need. You can rent out cameras if you don't have them, or a film as well. You can also buy film through the dark room, so you can just work on your own. You can come in there and kind of make it your space. The pottery studio and the art studio are always open, but the dark room is not always open because it has chemicals, obviously. But if you get to know and become close with the dark room archon, they like to call themselves the Darkon, which is, I think, really cute. They're also part of the assistant dean's office now, so I guess they're a student aid worker as well. But if you become close with them, they can kind of help you and give you the keys, and you can kind of make it your space as well.
And so I don't want to pick on you, so maybe I'll throw this question to Andrew, actually. Could you Julia just used the term archon when talking about a specific club. Could you just explain what an archon is? Because it's definitely something of a unique term to St. John's.
Yeah, so one thing I think you'll find about St. John's is we use a lot of Greek terms for positions of importance or leadership on campus. For clubs, we use archons to mean the people who would be the chair or the president of the club in most cases.
Awesome. Excellent. So I guess I want to throw you all, now that we've had a chance to introduce ourselves and meet the panelists, I want to throw a quick, difficult, and very serious question to all of you that I hope you will bear with the appropriate amount of solemnity. Where can you get the best ice cream in Annapolis?
That's a more difficult question than you'd think, because Annapolis has so many different ice cream places.
It depends. It depends on if you want soft serve or not. That's really the answer. For normal ice cream, I'd say, I forget what it's called, Penguin. What's that place
Annapolis
called?
Ice Cream Company.
Yeah, there's a big penguin outside. That's so, in my mind, it's just the penguin place.
Personally hate there, so I like to go to Red Bean or
The one.
I agree with Rayanne. You can't beat Red Bean. Not even a question.
We're decided then. So I think we have another question. I want to try and answer a couple of questions from the chat. I'm gonna pick a specific wording, but I also want to expand on it. So one question that we got very early on in this panel was, so when you came to campus, if you felt like you were limited by the inflexibility or the predetermined nature of the curriculum at St. John's, has your view changed? How has it changed in your time there? And I guess perhaps a more general way of putting it, which would also address some other questions in the chat, is sort of, how do you feel like, if your interest falls outside of the program, do you have the ability to engage in things that aren't being studied right now on the main program? And feel free to jump in, whoever wants to answer.
I could answer at least the first part of that question. I did a year at like what we might call regular university. And so I experienced I had the experience of picking from a wide variety of classes. I was a biology major. And of course you get electives, so it is really broad depending on what you did. I did like a history course. I did a bunch of history courses as well. And when I came to St. John's, I think one of the things I appreciated about St. John's was that our curriculum is very well thought and planned out, that the classes all complemented each other in a way that you don't get in a regular university. So it didn't make me feel limited in any way in terms of like, I don't have this that I get to do or that to do. And the curriculum is also just very broad in terms of what you can and can't do. I have never really sought anything outside of the program, but I know of people who have. For example, I've met quite a couple of people who, for example, want to do math a lot more strenuous than we would here. And so the college offers, the career services offer programs. There's one called Pathways. If you want to do courses that we don't offer, you can apply for Pathways, and they pay for the tuition for you to do whatever course you like. And that can also go in, for example, if you wanted to do medicine, you can, if you wanted to do it right after St. John's, you can do the prerequisites over the course of your 4 years here during summer breaks. So St. John's does give you some room or some avenue for you to expand past what we do here.
Anybody else want to jump in?
I just wanted to say, when I applied to St. John's, I was thinking about either going to art school or St. John's. And so when I decided on St. John's, I thought that I was letting go of being an artist or working as an artist, because I did a ton of that in high school, and that was like my primary focus, and that was the extracurricular that I really cared about, other than like the normal classes I was taking. Because I mean, I feel like all of the other normal classes, even like the preceptorial, which are extra classes that I was taking in high school, like I took a Russian lit class, I felt like that all kind of ended up incorporated at St. John's, because we do so much, and every class, because it's not like a core curriculum, you don't have like a syllabus, you kind of end up talking about and working through so many different subjects that it doesn't feel like it's very limited in a lot of academic ways. But I felt like I wasn't getting what I wanted, what I would have gotten from art school. And so it took me some time to adjust to being here and to not doing art, and to just focus on philosophy and thinking about the books. And as I went along, I realized that wasn't really possible for me, that I would always be incorporating all of the things that I cared about, that I wouldn't like let myself live and not have the things that mean something to me. And so when I was writing my papers, we were writing a paper, what makes a dead fish not a fish anymore? Why is the definition of a fish include like a living, breathing, moving, reacting thing, and once it's dead, it's just a corpse? And so that was the kind of question, and I instead answered it in terms of like, why do artists learn about anatomy when they're drawing? What about anatomy and dissecting fish helps you understand what it means to be a fish, the fishness of a fish? And then when you're drawing, how is it that you're not drawing a corpse, but you're drawing a living, reacting, moving thing? And so I guess that's just an example that can be laid out in a lot of different ways of how to incorporate extracurricular interests into what you're already doing here.
Awesome, great. I think I want to ask another sort of similarly related question from the chat. Beyond interests, so the thing that I think folks hear about when they first interact with St. John's, we talk about it a lot in admissions, and it is an enormous part of the St. John's community, is the academic program. And I guess I would love to hear from all of you your sense of, do you spend all your time in class, or do you have time to do other things? We've talked quite a bit about some of the things that you do, but what does that schedule look like? Are you, scrapping and scrabbling for time, or how do you feel, how much time do you feel like you have to do things outside of the program itself?
I will say pretty quickly, I think that part of what makes the scheduling of the program really awesome is that there are certain slots during the week that are free for clubs to meet for activities. So Wednesday evenings, there are no classes, and that's when certain intramural games will take place. So that's sort of scheduled into, I guess, the thought process behind the schedule, to make time where everyone is available. And also something else that's really cool on the other end of the spectrum is almost everyone has seminar at the same time from 8 to 10 p.m. Mondays and Thursdays. And that is a really big bonding experience for people to all have class at the same time, come out onto the quad and talk to each other. But because I think the question was, do we have time to balance? And I really find it to be the case. And I find that everyone, so the people who are in charge of my work study are very understanding that class time is sacred, and, that they understand that school is school, and you're not expected to be anywhere except your classroom. when you have class, but there is still plenty of time to engage in your extracurriculars, whether it be, I know last year when I was on DC, we had a lot of our meetings during lunch. And so everyone just finds a way to work around the schedules, especially on the weekends. I think I was talking to a prospective student this week, and they asked me, you know, do you find that like living in a small town, coming from Los Angeles, is really different? And I realized like I mostly want to be on campus because on the weekends there are things that are happening on campus, and that's, you know, we still have to do our homework, but there are waltz parties and reality parties, plays being performed, time to go to the pottery studio or play in an intramural sport, and that's, you know, those are all really good opportunities to make use of your time when you're not in class.
I think you have to be very strict with your time management when you do a lot of extracurriculars. My freshman year, I worked in admissions, and when I interacted with prospective students, I would always tell them, you know, if you're gonna come here, I think you should find something. I think it's very difficult to just immerse yourself into the books. I think you need an outlet, whether it's like, I think Michael talked about like going down to the boathouse and not just taking part in sailing, but like Michael would seek, I think Michael said the yoga studio. You said you would go to the yoga studio and stuff like that. So like, I think you should definitely find a hobby or some extracurricular activity once you're here. I think like the first 3 months or so of my freshman year, 2 or 3 months, I didn't, and I literally thought I was losing my mind. And then I started going on to intramurals, and it made all of the difference I mean, that's how I relieve the stress of the class, but I definitely recommend finding something, and there are a lot of different things you can do here. Like Adel pointed out, it's scheduled in a way that there are club activities Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Fridays, and weekends, just mostly days that aren't seminar days.
Yeah, but also I think an important thing to note is that just that we do so much, and we're listing all of these things, but like we have 4 classes, and we don't often have all of our classes in one day. Sometimes we only have 1 class, sometimes we have 2 classes, and those are hour-long classes or hour and 10 minutes long classes. And so a lot of our time is actually, more of our time is spent doing homework than is actually in class. And when it comes to homework, because we're reading, and it's a different kind of homework than in high school, and then in other colleges you can be working on it for hours and hours and hours. You could be working 4 hours for each class, and then you just never stop. And I mean, you need to break that up. Another personal anecdote, I was a swimmer in high school, a club swimmer, and I learned that being an athlete in that way, swimming for like 3 hours after school every day, and being at school for like 9 hours, and then having clubs and meetings, and I had like an hour and a half to do homework every day, and that's really it, because you come home from swimming and it's like already 7, you have to shower, and then you have to eat, and then it's like you have class again in the morning. And so it learns how to do time management, and it became a much better student because of it. And I'm not saying that like overloading yourself with clubs and meetings and all sorts of things like that will happen. But first of all, I don't feel as busy as I was in high school by far. But second of all, I focus more on the things that I care about. And when you manage your time in that way, you can be spending more time doing the things that matter to you. And that should include school, even though one of the questions was, do you enjoy all your classes? How can you like love everything that you're reading? It's hard. You don't always love everything that you're reading. I think that's something that we can all answer in different ways, but it's a very rigorous, and a lot of what you're learning is learning how to think about things that you've never thought about or never thought you'd care about before, like math and politics for me. Sorry, Andrew.
Yeah, I completely agree. You can really kind of sink all your time into it, or you can find other things to do. There's 40 or so chartered and actively 40 or so clubs that are chartered and actively requesting funds from the DC right now, and those, some of them are the all campus clubs that service the whole campus, usually, like Reality and Waltz Club, that throw parties for everybody. Some of them are just literally like 5 or 6 people who get together to work on a niche interest. Then we have dozens and dozens of study groups that I don't think anyone can ever keep track of, just because some of them range from big study groups to talk about Plato or Aristotle to 2 or 3 people getting together to study Arabic once a week. I've been able to hold an off-campus job since I came to St. John's, and a lot of students are able to do that too, if that's something that anyone is either interested in doing or is going to likely be doing during college. There's a lot of employment around Annapolis, and a lot of people are involved in Annapolis community organizations too, like churches, local political advocacy organizations, because we're right in the state capital. And a couple of students actually work either at the Annapolis City Hall or at the Maryland General Assembly. So Johnnies are out and about, and the way I think about it is anything I do outside of the program is an opportunity for me to take thought processes or ideas that I might have worked with. I'm involved in government, so I can take what I've read in Locke and use that to think through a policy that I might be looking at work or something like that. This is a very holistic program. It goes deep into your heart, and you can carry that with you no matter what you're doing.
Awesome. So I'm going to ask a question that I think will probably divide opinions a bit, and I'd love to hear particularly from Red and Michael. Red, because you spent time in Santa Fe, and Michael, because you are a freshman. But I'd like to know, how's the food on campus?
Well, personally, I think the food has a very decent selection, and I really appreciate the women who work there, women and men, sorry, who work there. They work really hard, and I really appreciate their work. As all college campus food, it goes on and off. Sometimes, some days are better than others, I would say. I know we have some good vegetarian and vegan options that students can partake in. I actually know a lot of people in my year who are vegan or vegetarian, and as far as I can tell, they seem to be pretty happy with what they can get. If you want to make some of your own food also, or buy your own groceries, there's a grocery store called Grawls within walking distance that I like to take advantage of.
Awesome. Yeah. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Any thoughts, Red? I know Santa Fe is famous for how good their dining hall is.
Yeah, I'm often asked whether the Santa Fe dining hall is better than the Annapolis one, but my honest answer is I don't remember the food from Santa Fe, so I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. But one of the things that I really love about the Annapolis dining hall is on Wednesdays and Saturdays, I think we have the pasta line. So it's just, you walk up to the station and they make fresh pasta for you right there. And then on Tuesday, it's taco nights. So the same concept, but with tacos. And we have a sandwich bar, and we have a bagel stand as well on the weekends. So I think we all, value the fact that we have those choices in the Annapolis campus.
I celebrate Taco Tuesday every week with 2 of my friends.
We do. A lot of kunai as well. We would all, like, after kunai on Tuesdays, we'd be like, Taco Tuesday, and we'd all just go to the dining hall together for tacos.
I have to say, after graduating, this is my one personal imposition that I will take in this. I mean, I really miss the availability of ice cream. If anyone wants to tell that story, that's the one thing I really miss in my adult life, is having to go find ice cream myself.
Yeah, I don't know what it means that when you asked what our favorite ice cream spot is, none of us mentioned the free ice cream in the dining hall.
Awesome. So I think I have a question that I would love to pose to just about anybody, but I want to hear, so this has been asked in a number of different ways, and let me find the wording of the one that I really liked. But I would love to know from all of you what your perspectives are on what the culture is like on campus as it pertains to social life, and then also to the party culture on campus. And I think, Chris, if you want to weigh in at some point, with the senior residence perspective and what kind of resources the college advocates to making sure that people are safe and doing well, but also I really want to hear from the students sort of what your perspective on what it's like to attend a Johnny party, what kind of parties there are, and what the culture is like, especially surrounding, going out and doing things on campus.
I can go first. I do believe that we have an open bottle policy on campus if you're over 21. So people are allowed to drink if they're of age, according to pub safety rules. That being said, every person on campus is really, really willing and open to engage with you according to your preferences. You don't have to partake in, there's literally zero social peer pressure, I find, about drinking or going to specific parties. So there was a question about describing the two main types of parties on campus, and those are the waltz and reality parties. Waltz parties are a little bit more formal. People dress up for them and they dance to waltz music and swing music. It's a lot of fun. And then there's also reality parties, which are more typical college parties, as well as, of course, people throw their own parties on their dorm halls. But I think that the number one thing is that because everyone has engaged in the program, if you go to a party, you always have something to talk about, right? Someone can always ask you, no matter what year they are, what was your seminar reading? And if they're an upperclassman, they will have read what you are reading, and you have something to engage with them about and find that common ground, regardless of your extracurriculars, regardless if you know how to dance or if you don't, or if you're 21 and can drink or not. Those things are not really boundaries in communication or in friendship, in my opinion. So that's my favorite part about the social life on campus, is if you want to talk to someone, they're going to be open to talking to you.
Hey, Robin, can I jump in now with something that follows up right there? I saw that you unmuted, so I don't want to complicate this. Adel just raised something interesting about mentioning that people can speak freely with each other because everybody has the same sort of grounding. I'm thinking about the senior resident role a little bit. And I don't want to sugarcoat this too much. Sometimes the senior residents deal with problems that arise because people get drunk. And that can be bumpy sometimes, and that's why they're there. They're there to help make sure that people are as safe as can possibly be in a world where sometimes people get drunk. So that's one aspect of the senior resident role. But I have a story that is actually probably the most difficult thing I ever had to deal with when I was a senior resident. And it had nothing to do with anybody drinking or using any kind of substance whatsoever. Somebody got really mad at Euclid and was burning their Euclid book. And that was chaos. I mean, people were like sobbing because they were so upset that somebody would take such a drastic action, and that they would, and it was on the quad, it was right in a ton of people were around. And so, on the one hand, there's this, just to answer Robin's question about the senior residents' role in this, senior residents are here to help with serious issues that might arise. On the other hand, sometimes at St. John's, what's a serious issue is not what it might seem like at a party. because of what Adel was suggesting about the fact that people have so much to talk about and there's so much else going on. So it doesn't necessarily get out of hand in the way that one might expect if one has watched or knows about, other more typical institutions of partying.
I like to just kind of jump in and give a very introverted person's point of view on the partying scene at St. John's. As far as I can understand, I'm not the best person to talk to when asking what a party is like. I don't attend many of them. I have attended some of the waltz parties, which I think they're very accessible actually, and they're very almost informal, but like in a formal way. I don't think that makes a ton of sense. But I, as a person who can't dance, they give lessons, and that's very, I found, I actually have started taking salsa lessons, which was a ton of fun. But yeah, so if you're not into the partying scene, if you don't really want to get into that, I can tell you that you can still make friends. You don't have to party. I have a very good group of friends who are also introverted, not so interested in things like that. And I think it's actually very easy to make friends with differences in opinions or differences in lifestyle. If that's something you're worried about, you don't have to go out and go to parties, whatever they do there. I don't know. You can still make good friends and have fun.
Awesome.
Oh, sorry.
I don't want to cut you off too much, but I do want to move on because I think the next question is really important. And I sort of want to throw it out to the group broadly. And I would love to hear from anybody who has something to say. I'd love to know a little bit about how you perceive the makeup of the student body. Where are folks coming from? What are your classmates like? And perhaps more pointedly, what does the student body look like in terms of diverse backgrounds? Be they social or economic or racial or any of the metrics that you care to talk about. How do you perceive the student body of the Annapolis campus in particular with respect to those elements of its makeup?
I come from Memphis, which is about 60 to 70% not white. So it was a little bit of an adjustment for me going to Annapolis, Maryland, where that's not the case. But I was really pleasantly not surprised, but I found it very pleasant that there are actually a lot of students from different backgrounds, from different cultures and different countries that I could really connect to and make friends with. So yeah, I think that maybe if you're coming from a place like Memphis, that's very diverse to the extreme almost, where there are a lot of cultures all mixing around and you expect that. It may be a little bit unusual to see, but I don't think it's the kind of thing that would put you off St. John's. I think it's still, St. John's has a very good mix of people coming from different backgrounds, different cultures.
So I'm from the Caribbean. I'm from Trinidad and Tobago. So the shift for me was extremely drastic. Not just I don't know, racial or cultural diversity, but like where I'm from, there was no one here like that. So for me, it took quite an adjusting period. But I also want to touch on something Michael just said about, even though it is kind of a shock, or you kind of go through that shock of the shift, and I had the extra layer of like the cultural shock. There was something, I don't know how to describe it, but there was something that made me feel at home. And I think because I found a community, through intramurals, it allowed me to, it kind of smoothed the integration, process a little more. But at the same time, you do find a lot of people. Like, I've met a lot of people here from different cultures that I didn't expect. I knew what I was getting to, right? But I still didn't really expect the amount of diversity that I met when I got here. So there's that. so you just have to find, I think for me, I just had to find ways to make that shift. I get a lot of questions, when I worked in admissions, from students of color, about like, why'd you choose to come here? Or does the lack of, I don't know, African American authors bother you, or the lack of diversity? And my answer to them was always that, and this might sound a little cheesy, but the program kind of brought us together in some ways. Not in every way. I'm not going to pretend like I felt completely at home culturally here, even now, but the program did bring us together in some ways that I think still made it comfortable for me, that I still loved being here, and I have no regrets staying here for 4 years.
Yeah, I think that I was just gonna come at the question from a different angle. Like some of the questions that we've gotten before are like, the campus is really small. Like, how do you feel about going to such a small school? But then we're also talking about how much diversity there is and how that brings us together with the books. And so I think that those are two different answers, but I think you could also answer it in that, or at least how I felt was that it's kind of like going to a large college where everyone is taking the same major, but coming and deciding to come to the school for different reasons. And so it brings you together in a community because you're all like-minded on one level, but you're also all coming here for different reasons, and that's crucial to come here for your own reasons, and to come here because you realize that it's what's right for you right now. Like, you might think years from now that this was the school that you need right now, that you want to learn how to think, learn how to listen, learn how to read the books, and work with people in a very large environment. I don't know. It makes the school feel bigger for me because people are all coming from entirely different worlds, and they're all finding common ground at St. John's. When we graduate, we all go in entirely different directions. It's not like we're all graduating and becoming like teachers, although a lot of us do, but a lot of us become doctors, a lot of us become scientists, some people go into the entertainment industry back in Los Angeles. We have people going in all different directions, and yet we still have this common ground of we love the books, we love learning how to think, and learning how to sit in a conference room. And these are skills that we get from St. John, sitting in a conference room and finding a way to solve a problem that you wouldn't have been able to do with your little brain, like everyone in a room has their own little brains, and you're answering a question, and you're not just fighting to like be the top dog. You're finding a way to have your questions challenged, have your answers be proved wrong or be proved right in an entirely different way, and then you come up with a mega brain that can answer. This is super stupid sounding, but you come up with a way to solve a problem that you wouldn't otherwise have been able to do. And this is a skill that is crucial for every department that you could end up finding yourself in after St. John's. And so that's one of the reasons why I felt like this was what I needed to do now, even though that's completely different from someone sitting next to me,
If we have
Sorry
time,
for my silly.
if you have time, I'd come from it from sort of a different perspective. I grew up in a very religious community, and I wasn't born in the US. And that's sort of, I think, something that, looking at me, you wouldn't think that I have an experience different from most people who live in Maryland, I guess. But yeah, I come from an extremely different culture than Maryland. And I guess what being at St. John's, sort of leaving my community to be exposed to a place where a new community is being built by the program, was to learn that you could never really know or judge based on a person's looks what their ideas are going to be, and how their ideas and way of seeing the world are going to affect you and your ability to think well and think differently. And that's really, I think, a crucial thing. You know, learning to not judge based on appearances, because the classroom really shows a different side of everyone than you might see outside. It's really awesome, and some of my close friends and classmates come from China, come from all sorts of places, or from very small communities in the US that I didn't know anything about. So yeah, I'd say that it's sort of, the experience is one where you learn to judge people based off of who they are once you get to know them, instead of making presumptions.
Awesome. Does anyone have anything else they want to throw in before we move to our sort of concluding question? Awesome. Okay, so we have a tremendous amount of excellent questions in the Q&A, which unfortunately we're not going to be able to get to because we're coming up in the last few minutes of the meeting. I'm going to pose one more question to everybody, and I guess I think maybe this will be a bit of a divisive one, but I always like to end this question with this question because I think it sets people's teeth on edge, and I usually think that's a good way to leave people from the end of a panel like this one. So could everyone just say, without equivocating, which I think is going to be the great challenge, what your favorite book on the St. John's program is? I will allow you 2 sentences of equivocation if you must, but that's it. No more equivocation than that.
I'm going to say Alexis Tocqueville, de Tocqueville, Democracy in America, because I keep thinking about it lately, and I really want to reread it right now.
This is a really hard question.
That's 1 sentence of equivocation.
I think I'm going to say Don Quixote, because it's the first thing that came to mind, and because we get to learn how we can take part in madness, and that's how I feel right now. Sorry.
In my limited freshman experience, I'm going to say Plutarch's Lives. That's all. I think that's all the equivocation I get.
Chris, I know what you're going to say.
I gotta go with Paradise Lost. It touches on everything that came before it and everything that comes after. It changes. It's great. I love it.
Red and Andrew, who wants to be on the hot seat?
Antigone.
See, I did this to you on purpose.
I think Antigone poses a problem that we run into in every generation, and that's the first time that it's brought up.
I would have to say Montaigne's essays, just because it paves the way for every writer that comes afterwards. It's an exploration of oneself.
Awesome. Well, so for those of you in the chat, that this is we're coming up to the end of our student life panel in Annapolis. We'll be following up with you about the questions that we weren't able to get to today, and many of our panelists will be available to chat and email with you farther down the line. But for the moment, I believe we're going to start to wrap up here and head towards the closing remarks from our president, Pano Canella. So thank you all for joining us for this event. Our panelists did an excellent job. I'm going to give them a round of applause. You can silently give them a round of applause if you like, although that's probably maybe a little bit of a strange thing to do. But I just wanted to say thank you so very much for taking the time to join us today for this Campus Life panel. There's a lot to know about what it means to be a Johnny that we weren't able to get to today, and I hope we'll be able to get to it with you in the future.